Hello and welcome to this very special episode on One Play Sports. I have with me Shreya Adhav, who is an award-winning sports and clinical nutritionist. Shreya, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anubhav. Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me for your session.
Absolutely, the pleasure is certainly ours. Shreya, I would love for you to perhaps kick things off with a very quick introduction, talking a bit about your background, just so that we can set the context straight for all the viewers who are watching, and they can also ask appropriate questions to you. Then,
Right. So hello everyone. I hope you're doing well and you're safe at your home. Myself Shreya Adhav. I'm a founder and sports nutritionist at Spirit Sports Nutrition Clinic. Spirit basically means nourish your soul. So ours is an online clinic, and we are dealing with athletes all across the globe who are into different sports and in different, at a different level. And plus, I'm an also award-winning most influential woman, and I've been dealing with in the athletes since more than 5 years now. So that's a short and sweet introduction about myself.
fantastic. The viewers who watch all the coverage on One Play Sports, they're all sports fanatics. A lot of them appreciate lots of the athletes that we cover. So I'm pretty sure everything that you have to say will be right down their alley. To kick things
Right.
off, I want to ask you first about how exactly athletes can actually optimize their performance based upon their nutrition. Of course, the nutritional intake for athletes looks very different compared to what the nutritional intake for non-athletes looks like. But for the sake of this discussion, what we can do is such that the discussion is actually relevant to everyone who's actually watching it, right? We can talk about
Mhm.
athletes as well as non-athletes, and we can actually explicitly mention what the differences are, such that everyone finds this conversation to be relevant. But let's kick things off with the athletes first, right? How important is it for athletes to be making sure that every single aspect of their nutrition is optimized to the fullest? Only because it's a game of very fine margins whenever athletes are out there
Right.
on the field. Do you agree?
Right, definitely. So there are so many aspects, and nutrition is just one of it, which is one of the most important aspect when it comes to an athlete's life or their performance. Okay, because even if they're training for 2 to 3 hours, they are eating throughout the day. Right, so that's what that makes it as the most important aspect when it comes to their performance or when it comes to their recovery, because these all small things are important when it comes to whether the kind of game they are into, or whether the kind of age they are into, or the requirement of their sport. Okay, so the requirement of their sport also is dependent on what kind of energy system is used. So it can't be like, okay, if a cricketer is following certain kind of a diet, the similar kind of a diet can't be followed by a tennis player or by a swimmer or any other sport per se. Right, so that's the major difference, and that is what is basically increasing the awareness when it comes to sports nutrition, or when it comes to the differentiation between an athlete's nutrition every sport wise, and also a person who's not into any sport. Because like I said, athletes are training more than 3 to 4 hours in a day, wherein if you see an individual who's doing any sort of a fitness or a physical activity, that's somewhere around an hour or maximum 2 hours. Okay, that's the reason why the energy requirement, the nutritional requirement also goes up when there is more requirement, or with regards to the kind of food which you're eating, for the amount of physical activity or the training which you're doing. So that's how I would differentiate it.
Fantastic. I think you've laid down a very beautiful foundation for this discussion. Now, based on the two broad buckets, right? Athletes who train for 3 to 4 hours, if not more, on a daily basis. And the second one being, say, normal people who probably work out on a daily basis, spending 45 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5 hours at most, right? Athletes first, 3 to 4 hours, you mentioned that the energy consumption is much higher. So I'm guessing, and you might be able to correct me, I'm guessing their carbohydrate intake also has to be much higher, because carbohydrates is where they're actually getting the energies from, right? So they have to
Right.
constantly replenish the glycogen cells in the body,
Mm,
compared to,
mm.
say, non-athletes who can probably do with a slightly lower consumption of carbohydrate, relatively speaking. Is that correct? Could you add a bit more information to this?
So I would say, talking about macronutrients, whether it's
Hmm.
carbohydrate, protein, or fat, they more or less are same considering the kind of activity which you're doing. But what is more different is the amount of calories you're consuming.
Okay.
Because if I'm planning maybe say 3,000 to 4,000 kilocalorie diet for an athlete, definitely a person who's doing 1 hour or 2 hours of workout would not be able to eat that much.
Yeah.
Right, so I would basically say that the carbohydrate requirement, yes, definitely they play a major role when it comes to storing glycogen, or like a source of your energy. Okay, so yes, definitely they play a role, but when it comes to the portion, like I said, depending on what sport they are into, depending on how many hours they are training, there are a lot of other markers also which we have to consider, and based on that we come to a conclusion that okay, this many carbohydrates should be given from these many calories. So it is more of, I would say, a calorie game or an energy game, rather than talking about the carbohydrates specifically. So that's how it is.
Understood. So if I look at the TDEE, which is the total daily energy expenditure, the
Yes,
TDEE athletes who are spending 3 to 5 hours every day training is much higher compared to say what the TDEE looks like for
exactly,
non-athletes. As a result of which, you mentioned
exactly.
that the macronutrient breakdown between carbohydrates, fats, and proteins might still remain the same, except that you're going to see a much higher caloric intake in the case of athletes
Right.
who might have much higher TDEE.
Right, right, right. Because
Understood.
what happens is, even if, like I said, about two different sport, the kind of energy or the kind of fuel which is used for the sport to perform is also different.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
one sport, if we consider cricket, it needs more energy to be on the field for longer duration, maybe for 3 to 4 hours, if
Yes.
it's a 2020 match or if it's a one day or test series. But if you compare it with the swimming, which will have short bouts of events throughout the day, then the energy requirement, the fuel will be different. To put it in a simple example, it would be like a car which is running on a petrol and a car which is running on diesel, right?
Hmm.
Both the cars requirement will be different depending on how the engine is designed, depending on what is the requirement, at what speed we are going to drive it, and stuff like that. So same is with regards to the sports, and same with regards to the nutrition as well. So yeah.
Brilliant, ma'am. So you know that brings another breakdown to mind. So one of them being sports which require higher intensity. So very high periods of intensity in very short periods of time, right?
Right,
You talked about swimming. You gave one example, but we can also perhaps think about a 100 meter or a 200 meter sprint, right?
right,
You look at
right.
it, a Usain Bolt versus others where you can think of maybe like a cricket, much longer duration. You don't necessarily have to be performing at high intensity throughout. Or you could also look at something like a marathon, right, where it's more
Right,
about endurance, where it's stretched out over 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So what
correct.
can you talk about the fundamental difference in what the diets or the what the nutrition would look like between people belonging to these two broad buckets?
So yes, definitely. Like, to put it in simple words, it's more like endurance sport versus power sport, right?
Yes.
Some sport also requires both the aspect, like it covers both the aspect. Like for example, if we talk about swimming, swimming is both endurance as well as power. So when you begin with the swimming or when you're training, you need more of endurance. You need more of your heart and lung capacity to be trained well, so that you're top of your game. Wherein when you have to finish the last set, or probably you have to finish the
Mhm.
event, then at that point of time you need more of energy. Okay, so yes, definitely, like I said, with regards to the sport requirements, the nutrition strategy differs. And talking about endurance sport, you need more of carbohydrates, you need more of protein and fats to survive for that duration. Okay, comparing it with the power sport, or comparing with maybe other sport which is a combination of endurance and power, at that point of time you need more of, I would say, protein, as compared to more of fat or carbohydrate. So carbohydrate also will be needed, like you said, that initially carbohydrate is a source of energy, and yes,
Right.
it is important whether it's storing glycogen or whether it's giving a quick energy. But sport wise, the macronutrients also differ, the micronutrients also differ. Some sport might need that, okay, the micronutrients should be good, your vitamin D should be good, so that you're able to sustain well, so that you don't get any sort of injuries. So yes, the nutritional aspect for endurance athlete, or the calories per se. So most of the runners, like you said, even I used to run. So there is something called as carb loading, which most of the people do. So they basically, restore the carbs or restore the glycogens, so that they can survive for 2 hours of run, or 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever kilometer it is. So versus a swimmer or versus any other athlete or a power athlete would not do that, because that's not the requirement of their sport. They
Makes
need
sense.
is something which is short bout and quick energy giving. So that's how it is basically. And nutrition wise also, depends, like what is your body's requirement, how is your body's composition, because every sports body composition is also different. If you see a marathon runner versus if you see a
Mhm.
tennis player or cricket player, the body composition is altogether
Right.
different. You will not be able to see a lean person on the cricket ground.
Right.
So you all these strategies work around these all small aspects, and that's how the nutrition or a sports nutrition is been designed. So yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Understood. You've underlined the importance of carbohydrates, regardless of which bucket you belong to. So, is
Right.
it possible for you to be functioning at max capacity on a keto diet, or is a keto diet only a temporary solution if you're looking to lose weight at a rapid pace?
See, any diet, not specifically with keto, I would say any diet, if a person is willing to start with or go on with, you should always think about one aspect. Can I make it as my lifestyle? Okay. Can I do it for my entire lifespan? Okay. If there is even a small thought saying that, okay, no, probably I can do it for only 3 months, 4 months, or 6 months, whatever it is, then you have to actually think about whether it's going to work or whether how I'm able to do it. But talking athletes and keto diet or a high fat diet, it's I would say a big no, because there's not much of a scientific research which is done that okay, keto diet is essential or it is giving good results with the performance. Because especially when it comes to endurance athletes, all you need is carbohydrates. Okay, you need that instant energy coming in every now and then, right? So it might work for weight loss, but the biggest challenge which most of dietitians face or most of the nutritionists face is, even if a person is following a keto diet, even if they reach to their potential weight, okay, or their required ideal body weight, what next? So people don't know how to wean off that,
Makes
right?
sense.
And that's what most of the time is like a big failure, because people lose weight drastically and they gain weight drastically. So it's like a cycle. You're basically giving a shock to your body saying that okay, you follow this thing, and then
Mhm.
ultimately you go off it, and then your body it's difficult for your body to basically adapt to the change. So my suggestion would be not to go in for such kind of diets, because you want quick fixes. Okay. Because if you're following these kind of diets, yes, definitely there are certain nutrients, there are certain macronutrients as well as micronutrients which you're compromising on. Okay. And if you compromise it for maybe a certain point of time or certain period, your body is going to start showing you the results, or start showing giving you the signals that okay boss, this is not right, or this is what I'm facing. So one thing which you can always, if you want to go in for this, whether it's weight loss or whether it's athletes, for athletes, so it's a big no from my side, no matter you're a power athlete or an endurance athlete. But if you're looking from a weight loss perspective, you should be aware about what's plan B after that. And secondly is you should be doing it with a expert's advice, so that you know that okay, you're on a right track and your body is also not being compromised with regards to other nutrients.
Brilliant. You've set the record straight. We have a few questions coming in, but before I
Yeah.
shift over to the questions, I definitely want to touch upon supplements. Now, you talked about how if you're actually completely restricting the intake of a particular type of food or a particular food group or a particular macronutrient, right? There are certain things that you're compromising on. You might not be getting enough micronutrients
Right.
that might be essential. Can we still compromise on a particular macronutrient? Say for instance, if we completely reduce the consumption of carbohydrates, but at the same time we are now using supplements to perhaps get the intake of micronutrients that we need to compensate for the fact that we aren't quite consuming the same
Right.
level of carbohydrates. So what is your take, broadly speaking, what is your take on the use of supplements these days? A lot of athletes use supplements. Lots of these gym companies, the fitness industry has been promoting the use of supplements. So whey
Right.
protein, of course, that's the obvious one that everyone knows about, but you have creatine monohydrate, you have branch chain amino acids, and various other types of supplements, fish oil, magnesium, zinc, calcium, iron. So your take on these, which are the good ones that people should consider consuming, which are the ones that you should avoid, which are the ones you should use only under special circumstances, or under doctor supervision. So your take on supplements as a whole.
So, like the name suggests, supplement. It's basically to supplement the nutrition which you're not able to get from the food. But before going ahead with any sort of supplement, whether it's a whey protein, whether it's a creatine, BCAA, or any sort of a fish oil or multivitamin, anything, my suggestion is always to get your blood work done to
Okay.
see whether your body exactly requires it or not. Okay. If your body does not need it, then ultimately it's like an excessive dosage which you're giving, which
Okay.
is not necessary. Okay. That's the reason why most of the time we hear that okay, I took whey protein and then I got kidney stones and my kidneys couldn't bear it and stuff like that, right? Because you don't know how much you need it. Okay. And whether your body exactly needs it or not. So yes, the first thing is to get the blood work done, to know that okay, do I really need it? Okay. And secondly, yes, there are a wide range of products available. There are wide companies who are promoting it, and yes, they do help to some extent. But again, one important thing is, you can't take supplements for years. You can only take it for a certain point of time, or you can't be dependent on them, or you can't replace it, considering
Mhm.
that, okay, if I'm not getting any sort of macro or micronutrient, can I take a pill, or can I take a supplement, or in a powder form? You can't do that. Okay, because ultimately it's your body, it's how it functions, it needs food. So the major priority should be your food first, and then, like I said, it's the supplement. That also, one suggestion is, you should never take supplement until and unless you know your body. And secondly is, under a medical supervision, or under a nutritionist or a dietitian who's qualified to know what supplements are, or what are the ingredients. Because certain times, because I deal with a lot of national and international athletes, I have to be very careful when it comes to supplements. Because if there are any hidden ingredients or hidden components, then that might end an athlete's career. Right? If
Right.
it comes under doping, if it has any particular ingredient which might be causing any sort of discomfort, or might have any issues, then ultimately it's like a big no-no. Right? So you have to be careful. And nowadays there's so many wide range of products, but we don't know which one to go in for. So it's always best to get an expert's advice on the same. Doing supplements or taking supplements blindly is ultimately going to affect your body, especially when you don't need them. So understand your body. Your body is the best machine, I would tell you, which tells you that, okay, this is what I need and this is what I don't need. Okay. It gives you symptoms, it gives you signs that, okay, if I've not eaten anything, I'll get an headache. If I don't eat something, if I've eaten something which is giving me acidity, that's all signs and symptoms. So basically, you need to understand, recognize, and see that what suits your body best. And if you are able to understand your body well, then I don't think so you will need any sort of a supplement, when you know that, okay, food is the one major thing which is helping me achieve what I need. So yeah.
Beautifully summed up, Pam. The reason I was smiling was because you mentioned that you should always perhaps consume supplements under an expert's guidance.
Right.
India में तो every person who's behind the counter at a chemist or a druggist is an expert. तुम
Right.
दुकान में जाओ, you're like, अच्छा पेट में दर्द हो रहा है, you're like, they very confidently they say ये ले लो, or you tell them,
Exactly.
it's back pain है, ये ले लो. And oftentimes we just end up trusting them. Perhaps we end up trusting them more than we trust our doctors. But
Right.
let's move on to some questions. Here's Venkat saying, I have often heard that sugar is bad for athletes. Is it true? I believe it is true, but the follow up question that I want to ask you is, of course, a lot of us have sugar cravings because of some of the insulin spikes that we see. So, in the event that we're actually craving sugar, but we know that it's going to be detrimental for our health, what are some good substitutes that we can think of? Because I was looking at your Instagram page as well, and I saw lots of these, these exotic recipes
Yes.
and food items that you had, which are healthier, but at the same time they taste well as well. So they take care of the health as well as the
Right.
taste component. So if sugar is pernicious for the health, what are some of the substitutes you propose?
Right. So sugar, yes, there are a lot of research articles coming up that yes, sugar is kind of bad for your health, because it's a simple carbohydrate, I would say, and it does not have much of nutritional value, rather than satisfying your taste buds. So for athletes, I wouldn't say it is exactly bad, because what you're putting in, your body knows how to utilize it. Right. So until and unless your body is not showing you any sort of these symptoms or any sort of a complications with regards to sugar, then I would say you can definitely go in for that. Talking about the substitutes for sugar is your stevia. Okay. Stevia is also another natural herb which comes, and which is as good as sugar when it comes to taste, and it is 0 calories. Okay, so it is a natural form. It comes in a leaves, and it's basically a leaf, and then it comes in a powder form, or in a I would say liquid form. So even that can be a substitute. If you're looking for something which is at the local level, you can definitely have jaggery, you can have honey, because again they are the natural sources. Though sugar, jaggery, honey, if you talk about the calorie content, it is more or less the same in
Mhm.
all the three things, but the processing, or the way it is made, it is different as compared to sugar. Sugar is more processed as compared to your jaggery and honey. So if you're looking for something which is natural and which is good enough, then you can definitely opt for jaggery or honey. And the last option is stevia. Stevia is a little pricey, because it's upcoming, and there's a lot of other things which you have to consider. But yes, these are the three substitutes which I would say. And talking about the sugar cravings, which most of the people get, I every client of mine, they tell that, okay, ma'am, lunch ke baad kuch na kuch chahiye meetha, right? So that's because, probably your body is deficit of magnesium. Okay, so
Okay.
magnesium is another micronutrient. If in case you're deficit in that, that's the reason why your body is signaling you that, okay, I need sugar or I need something sweet post my meals, right? So if you address that, and if you're getting any so these kind of cravings, then ultimately you need to see that, okay, what can I substitute, which is rich in magnesium and which is taking care of my cravings as well. So this is how it is. But talking about athletes and sugar, I wouldn't say it's bad, but again, moderation is the key. No food is bad until unless you know how much to eat and how your body to utilize it. So
Ma'am,
yes,
I live in Calcutta, so according to you, every single Bengali here is deficient in
Rasgulla.
magnesium because खाने के बाद मिष्टी दोई, रसगुल्ला, गुलाब जामुन तो खाना ही पड़ता है, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But jokes apart, so how can we make sure that we're not deficient in magnesium? What are some common food items that we can consume to make sure that we are hitting the magnesium levels required?
So see, food items wise, yes, your green leafy vegetables, dark chocolate is an excellent example or excellent food which I suggest to most of my kid athletes. So dark chocolate maybe in say in a powder form or maybe like a cube, but anything
Okay.
over and above 60% of cocoa, you
Okay.
can
Yeah.
definitely incorporate that as a substitute for your sweet cravings. Like I said, seeds. Excellent source, your flax seeds, sunflower seeds, chia
Okay.
seeds, all of these seeds are excellent sources of your magnesium and other micronutrients which we most of the time are deficit of. So yes, definitely these are some of the foods which you can incorporate. Even non-veg, if you're a non-vegetarian, then fish and other sources are also good in magnesium. So yes, these are some of the sources.
Brilliant. Next up, we've got Akshay Lokhande. He says, what is an ideal food to eat before a daily workout session, and at what time interval should I be consuming it? To shed some more light on the question, or perhaps ask like a second part to this question. I'm guessing it also depends upon the type of workout that you're doing. Some workouts are more
Yes.
high intensity, right? Short intervals but high intensity. Other workouts are perhaps longer interval but low intensity. So if you could perhaps give us some more granular details depending upon the type of workout that you might be embarking upon.
Right, right. So, if you're doing, say, maybe walking or maybe any sort of a cardio workout, then at that point of time, your body does not really need a good amount of, I would say, a pre-workout or like an entire dense meal. Okay, but talking about a pre-workout or something which you need to fuel your workout is should be a combination of your carbohydrate as well as protein, both the things. Okay, so there should be, I would say, high amount of carbohydrates and moderate amount of protein, because carbohydrates are going to fuel your your activity for at least say 30 to 45 minutes, and then protein will take over it. Okay,
Okay.
so if you're working out maybe for say an hour, okay, that's how we'll segregate it. So then in that case, a fruit or maybe a dried fruit with some nuts, or maybe say peanut butter, or like a sandwich. These are some of the options which you can, I would say, sandwich, not even sandwich, because that's will go for the activity which is going more than for 2 hours. But
Okay.
fruit, dry fruits, chickpeas, laddus, these are the simplest option which you can do 30 minutes before your workout. So the ideal time is to start fueling yourself 30 minutes before the workout, no matter how what intensity workout you're doing or for how long you're doing, but 30 minutes is the gap. Okay, so that your body is able to digest it and give you the energy.
Makes
And
sense.
talking about anything which goes more than for an hour or maybe say 2 hours, which is like a combination of cardio and plus strength training, or maybe weights, then in that case, like I said, maybe say peanut butter sandwich or maybe egg sandwich or paneer sandwich. These are some of the options along with the options which I already said earlier. And then you can also have wraps or rolls, so that it is giving you energy for that 2 hours of workout. So these are some of the options which I think most of the people can do easily when they're working out at home, or wherever they're working out.
Ma'am, can you be my nutritionist? Because you mentioned peanut
Definitely.
butter, and my love for peanut butter knows no bounds. There's nothing in my
Okay.
life that gives me as much pleasure as consuming peanut butter does. And
Definitely. Definitely.
what I typically end up doing is, you talked about how peanut butter can be substitute for sugar. What else? What I'll do is, sugar नहीं खाऊंगा, avoid करूंगा, एक चम्मच चीनी नहीं खाऊंगा, but instead I'll have 10 teaspoons of peanut butter, and so indirectly end up consuming more than 1 teaspoon of sugar
More
that I
than.
actually avoided.
Yeah,
Right. So, but that's my weakness,
exactly.
which is why I actually avoid keeping it in the house, because I know that if I do get that bada wala fun foods ka jo dibba aata hai na,
Right.
924 grams ka, I know I'll
Right.
just finish it off in a jiffy. Anyway, we have we
Okay.
have Nikita Vaidya here. Good to see her name. She says, "Are there any preferred guidelines for nutrition of adolescent athletes, considering the growing age and the need for right nutrition? Is it also sport dependent in them, or a holistic approach is ideal there?"
So, yes, definitely, adolescent athletes, dealing with them is a task because they want all sorts of food. They want all junk foods also in their diet, and plus they want to keep up their performance as well. So, guidelines wise, what I most of the time do is I blindly follow RDA, which is recommended dietary allowance given by ICMR and National Institute of Nutrition (NIN), and along with that, considering the amount or the duration of training the athlete is doing, I add up the calories. So there are different ways actually to calculate the calorie intake, but this is the standardized way which I will recommend when it comes to adolescent athletes, because RDA is something which gives you, as per gender and as per age, how many calories a kid should eat. Okay, and what you have to do is basically add on the calories considering the hours of training they are doing, and considering, yes, definitely the sport they are into. So I would say it's a combination of sport and a holistic approach as well, because ultimately you have to be in an athlete's shoes and understand what they like, what they don't like, and plus how to be how to be like a give and take procedure. Like, if they don't like something, then what can you replace it with something which they love, right? So it should be holistic as well as sport dependent as well, because you can't ignore sport and the sport requirements. But yes, definitely, considering the RDA and plus the calories required for the sport is something which you can definitely consider when planning a nutrition or a sports nutrition for adolescent athlete.
Brilliant. And the next question is also by Nikita. And I think it's a very, very pertinent question, ma'am. Something that not too many people talk about, only
Yes.
because they're slightly afraid and shy. How important is the role of nutrition, especially in female athletes having eating disorders, and how is it managed? Recently I was reading an article talking about British gymnasts, and for the longest time, British gymnasts was silenced about the fact that they were made to go through these very rigorous training routines. The nutrition was, every single calorie was counted, as a result of which, it drove them absolutely crazy. And a lot of them ended up suffering from these eating disorders, anorexia, binge eating disorder, which is very common as well. I'll be very honest and candid with you. Between 2016 and 2018, for 2 years, I had constant binge eating disorder where I was binging and purging, binging and purging, binging and purging, only because of my perfectionist mindset. And when you have
Right.
this black or white mentality, all or nothing mentality, either you completely stick to your guns, or as soon as you feel that, oh, I've crossed the number of calories that I was supposed to consume in the day, you feel
Right.
that you can't differentiate between a big failure and a small failure. And so
Right.
it's something that not too many people talk about, given that it's a slightly sensitive topic. But can you actually touch upon Nikita's question here?
Yes, definitely, definitely. Like you said, it's not more. It's a kind of topic which is not most of the time discussed, because there are certain sport which needs an athlete to be in a certain body composition, or when it comes to weight. I do have a lot of athletes who come under weight category events. So when this is when this is the requirement of their sport, at that point of time, athletes, most of the time, they see that, okay, if I've eaten something, then they'll try to, like you said, anorexia or any sort of another eating disorder. That's I would say that's more of a mind game. There should be lot of, along with nutrition, there should be lot of psychological
Hmm.
counseling as well, which will make them understand that, yes, we know that, okay, these are the requirements of your sport, but hampering your body with regards to, maybe say, eating disorders, or maybe with regards to excessive training, it is not going to keep up your performance, or it is not going to take you where you want to be when it comes to your sport. So yes, nutrition plays a vital role, because if an athlete is doing some sort of a thing which is probably is going to hamper their performance, then you have to basically make sure that if there is a minus, how can we plus it with the right
Hmm.
nutrition.
Hmm.
Okay. So yes, female athletes most of the time have this issue, because females do have higher tendency of putting on weight, considering their body processes and considering their requirements. But trust me when I say this, that if you are following a nutrition plan to the T, okay, no matter what kind of sport you are into, what kind of requirements you have, and if you stick to it, definitely your weight will not go up. Okay, you have to basically see whether, even if you want to lose weight, so most of the time eating disorder comes into picture when your weight is more than what is required, or your body composition is not correct. So you have to basically see whether do I have more of fat percentage, or whether do I have more of muscle percentage, and what is the requirement for my sport. Like how you said gymnastics, so I would say it needs both, it needs fat as well as muscle as well, but the fat percentage should be in such a way that they are able to maintain their flexibility. If the flexibility is not there, there are higher chances of injuries. So if a nutritionist or if an athlete is able to pen it down properly, that okay, this is what I need to eat so that my body composition is intact along with my performance, then I don't think so it's going to be any sort of an issue when it comes to nutrition or when it comes to eating disorders. So I would say both the things, your psychological counseling along with that your nutritional counseling, both plays a vital role when it comes to eating disorders, especially in female athletes.
Ma'am, but do you think oftentimes what happens is, and I think along with the perfectionism that I had, something that actually caused me to perhaps, go on these binge eating sprees was the fact that I was eating sparingly for a long, long period of time. What happens is, if you're trying to reduce weight drastically, fine, you can do that for maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. But if you feel that if you're permanently in cutting mode, where you're permanently for like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, trying to eat at a caloric deficit, what happens to your body is, or your mind tells you that you are in a state of starvation. That's what
Right,
your mind thinks, that because you aren't getting the food that you need on a daily basis. And then your primal instincts take over. Then whenever you end up finding some food, right, you feel as if, I have to eat as much of it as possible, only because I don't quite know where my next meal will come from, which is
right,
exactly what the foragers and the hunter gatherers used to do back in the day,
right,
right? you
right,
you kill an animal, try stuffing yourself to whatever extent possible, only because you don't quite know when your next kill might come.
right,
So
right.
is that something that you would perhaps advise on avoiding permanently cutting? So you can have a cutting caloric intake for maybe a few weeks, but don't stretch that for too long. And once your mind starts thinking that you're in a state of starvation, you are also trying to consume the sugary and the salty foods, only because the
Right,
fatty foods, right? Because the fatty
correct,
foods keep you fuller for longer as well. Plus, it releases
right,
cortisol in your body. Cortisol, being the stress hormone, will make you crave the sugary and the salty substances. That is why whenever you're feeling stressed out at work, you never feel like craving vegetables. You always, you feel like craving like the
exactly,
chocolate at the counter, or you feel like craving pizza, because these are sugary as well as salty foods. So
right.
talk to me about the pitfalls of dieting, especially dieting, as it can perhaps cause binge eating disorders or anorexia.
Right. So see, like you correctly said, you go in the starvation mode, and internally, if we talk about, I always talk about this particular aspect, that what is the conversation happening inside your body, especially when you're starving. Okay, so whatever kind of food you eat, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is, your stomach emptying time is 1.5 hour. Okay, the food is basically pushed into your intestine for the further digestion in 1.5 hour. You start feeling hungry after 1.5 hour because your stomach requires food. Okay, and that's when your stomach sends a signal to your brain saying that, boss, I need food. Okay, but if you're busy in some or the other thing,
Mhm.
then yes, like you said, cortisol is secreted because it's a stress hormone, and it basically gives a signal to your stomach saying that, boss, for now you manage somehow, but whichever meal you'll eat next, kindly store it as fat, because you don't know what is the next meal, or when is the next meal you're going to get. Right, that's when a human body starts storing more and more fat, because your body needs that constant source of energy. So the rule of thumb would be that, okay, you should be eaten frequently so that your body composition is good. Like I said, you start craving for these kind of food because that's a signal, because your body is deficit in calories or deficit in foods. Okay, that's the reason why you will never crave for a broccoli, or you never crave for a vegetable, right? Because those foods generally does not give us that intense or high calories when it comes to
Yes.
food. So you would
Yes.
definitely start craving for fatty food, salty food, sweets, and so on. Right, so if you break this chain, or if you break this cycle, ultimately the choices which you'll make over the period of time is also going to be wiser, it's also going to be nutritious. So the best option or the best suggestion which I give to most of the people is, start eating frequently, even if you're
Yes.
not hungry. Okay, every 2 hours try and put something in your stomach, so that your stomach has a lot of tasks to do, plus you will not put on weight, and secondly your body's metabolism will be on the higher side, you will be healthy from inside. That's my brand's, the meaning of my brand: spirit, nourish your soul. Until unless your internal being is not happy, your mind won't be happy, how
Exactly.
you're feeling won't be happy, the emotions won't be correct, the kind of thought process you have won't be right. So you have to basically make sure that you're feeding your gut or your stomach
Correct.
well, so that your mind is also functioning well.
Absolutely, beautifully said. Which is why I think self improvement in many ways can also be a curse, especially when you take it to the extreme level. In your
Yeah,
bid to actually improve, constantly improve, you completely drive your mind crazy. And so it's very easy for
exactly.
self improvement to degenerate into self conflict, and self conflict to degenerate into something like self misery, which happens
Right.
all the time. Anyway, Akanksha Joshi next. She's saying, are vegan slash vegetarian athletes at a loss compared to eating athletes? Very common question, but look, we still have lots of schools of thought. There are lots of
Yes.
these vegans and vegetarians, with due respect to them, who talk about, who give specific examples of athletes who are performing at the elite level being vegan, being vegetarian. But of course, these are anecdotal cases, right? For
Right.
every vegan athlete, there are probably five athletes who eat meat. I'm not saying I belong to any of the camps, but what is your very objective take on veganism and vegetarianism amongst athletes, especially now, given the fact that it's gaining a lot of traction?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's the trending topic, I would say, across the globe, because of the documentary, I would say, which had come last year on Netflix. But like I said, every diet what you follow has its pros and cons. So you have to take a calculated risk. You have to see what's best for you. Talking about veganism, yes, definitely there are a lot of benefit when it comes to athletes, because their recovery is good, their performance is enhanced, they're basically feeling good, the inflammation is reduced in the body, okay, and they're able to be on top of their game. But you have to do consider that what are the possible nutrients which I might be deficit of, because when it comes to veganism, there are no milk products, there are no non-veg products.
Hmm.
So there are chances that your B12, your iron, vitamin D, zinc, your sodium levels or iodine levels, these are some of the possible nutrients which you might be deficit of. And if you don't correct it with the right nutrition or maybe with the supplementation, then it's not going to work. Okay. Yes, talking about the macronutrient, protein is also another aspect which most of the people might not be able to meet when they're on a vegan diet, right? So if you're able to manage all of these things, yes, like I said, under proper supervision, then in that case, athlete is going to get the benefit. All the top notch athletes who are vegan and who are performing well, that's because they know the cons as well. They know the pros, but they know the cons as well, that okay, these are the possible nutrients I might be deficit of, and how can I replace it with the supplement or the different kind of food. So until unless if you're able to do that, then yes, it's a good thing. Like I'm never opposite any sort of a diet until unless you do it right, until unless it's suiting your body. If you're doing it blindly, not considering what can be the possible deficiencies, then yes, definitely it's going to affect your performance, especially when we talk about athletes. And talking about the people or the athletes who are non-vegetarian or who are meat eating, like I said, it works both ways. You
Yeah.
have to basically see that what is suitable for you. Even meat eating, I wouldn't say it is bad or it is going to affect your performance. I've seen both kind of athletes. I've seen vegan athlete also, vegetarian athlete also, meat eating. All of
Yes.
them are doing well, considering the calculated risk and correcting them with the right nutrition.
Understood. So to each his own, to each her own, and of course, depending upon the sport, depending upon the body type,
Yes,
you have to see which one
definitely.
suits you best. And each of them has downsides, but you just have to ensure that you're minimizing the downsides and you're maximizing the upsides. Very quickly before moving on to the next question, I'll just talk to you about Virat Kohli's example. So recently, I was reading about Virat Kohli turning vegetarian. A lot of people think he's vegan, but he's not vegan. He still does consume some dairy products and
Right.
some whey protein as well, only so that he can maximize his protein intake, because a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet might not be sufficient when it comes to protein. And one of the reasons he actually switched to being a vegetarian is because of his meat consumption, his acidity levels in his stomach rose through the roof. His stomach had become very
Hmm.
acidic, as a result of which I think he started taking much longer to recover from certain injuries that he started having. And so
Right.
after he switched to vegetarianism, then his stomach, the acidity levels in his stomach actually went down, and then he just found himself to be more nimble. He thought that his recovery from injuries became much more catalyzed as a
Correct.
result of that. But of course, he was a non-vegetarian for many years, as a result of which he was probably able to pack a lot of muscle mass during
Right.
the formative years of his career. Diva Ganeriwal asking another very pertinent question: does the gluten-free diet help all athletes? I'll be very honest with you. A lot of people now become gluten-free, or turn to this gluten-free diet only because they think it's very sexy. I swear to God, if you ask 9 out of 10 people who want a gluten-free diet what gluten is, what gluten does to you, they won't be able to answer that. But only
Right.
because it's a way in which you can signal, or it's a vanity metric, or if it's a way in which you can stand out from the rest by being gluten-free. A lot of people do it, but can you talk to us about the science of gluten? What gluten does to you? Is it really harmful? Is it not? What's your take?
So see, gluten is basically a component present in your wheat and wheat products like barley, rye, and wheat specifically, I would say. And most of the time, what happens is when your stomach is not able to digest this particular gluten, your body starts showing results or starts showing some sort of a discomfort, especially when you have wheat or wheat related products. Yes, in India, predominantly wheat products is our life, I would say, or it's a major part of our Indian diet, so giving up on gluten is a more of a task, I would say. Even though people are switching to gluten free, there are a lot of options also, but like I said, you have to listen to your body. Okay. Until and unless if your body is not showing any sort of discomfort by having roti or paratha or any sort of a thing, do not switch over to gluten free diet. Okay. Yes, it has a lot of benefits because like you said about Virat Kohli, that he had acidity. Okay. What this basically certain things do is, whether it's veganism or whether it's gluten or lactose, these are all things coming up. They basically increase the inflammation in the body. Okay. And that's when your body is giving you the signals. Okay. When you switch on to different options, the inflammation is reduced, there is more of alkalinity in the digestive
Okay.
system,
Okay.
and that's when you start seeing better results. Okay. I am personally gluten intolerant, so
Okay.
until and unless you don't know that, okay, you are genetically, or you are allergic to gluten, do not try and switch to it. If you're an athlete, if you're definitely, if you go, I've seen this in one of my athletes who went to Asian Games, and we got to know that, okay, there were certain symptoms when it comes to your skin, when it comes to your digestion, when it comes to your hair health. These are all small symptoms. Or when it comes to the recovery as well, when it especially in athletes, these signs, if I know that, okay, this might be reduced or might be worked on by restricting or eliminating gluten, then only I would suggest that, okay, probably restrict it. But I wouldn't say completely go off it, because when you completely go off a certain food, and in athletes case, when they're traveling for their events, or when they're not at their place, or when they don't have their comfort food, at that point of time, when you're not going to get any sort of a gluten free meal, then it's going to be a drastic, I would say, a change or a drastic symptom which they might get, especially when they go gluten free. Yes, their recovery is improved. Yes, their inflammation reduces. Yes, their other markers are also improved when it comes to their performance when they go gluten free. But ultimately, you need a proof in front of you that, okay, genetically I am gluten intolerant, or I have an allergy with regards to gluten. Then only go off it. Other than just because it's a fad, don't go off gluten. So yeah.
Understood. So there might be lots of people who are actually gluten intolerant, but they aren't aware of the fact that they're gluten intolerant. So would you recommend, is the only way to find out if you're gluten intolerant or not, to perhaps go off gluten for maybe 1 month, see if you feel much better? If you feel substantially better, then maybe a lower consumption of gluten might be advisable for you.
So I would suggest, rather than going off completely for a month, restrict it. Okay,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
in a week, if you're having every day, reduce it to maybe 3 to 4 times in a week. Okay, have it
Understood.
only one time at a meal, and then start seeing the result. Because that's what I do. If you completely go off it, then I start getting the symptoms when I don't have
Understood.
an option. So restricting it, or reducing the frequency is the best option which I would suggest when it comes to gluten.
Understood. And ma'am, I know we're about 40 minutes into the chat. There's still 3 or 4 questions which I would love to take. And the fact that we have questions coming in thick and fast is a testament to how much people are enjoying like all the valuable information that you're sharing with them. So you still have about 10 to 12 minutes.
Yes, I do. I do.
Brilliant, brilliant. We have Swaroop Thapar here, who is asking, can I give whey protein to my 13-year-old goalkeeper as he practices daily? Brilliant question.
Yeah, really, really great question. But talking about a 13-year-old or adolescent, I would say not required, because if you're a non-vegetarian, or if you're able to meet the protein requirement throughout the day for a 13-year-old, then I would definitely not suggest any sort of a whey protein.
Understood. Aishwarya Jayaraman asking you, do runners need to eat more carbs compared to protein?
I would say both. They need both. Okay, carbs, like I said, more glycogen, more energy, able to survive or able to run for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. But protein per se is required for the recovery process. Okay, because as a runner, there's a lot of wear and tear which happens inside the body, especially when you have to run for 2 hours or 3 hours. I'm talking it from my personal experience. At the end of the run, it is so difficult for your body to cover up the I would say the damage which has happened internally. So until and unless if your protein is not good, your muscle will not be able to recover well. Secondly, the most important thing is, if you do not have good amount of muscle, or a well recovered or in well state, the muscle is not well good enough, then ultimately you will not be able to store the glycogen in the muscle, because that these are the two places, like liver and your muscle are the two places where your glycogen is majorly stored. So until and unless your muscle health is not good, you will not be able to store good amount of carbohydrates, especially when you're a runner.
Ma'am, so how does it work then for these ultra marathon runners? Because they're very, very, very lanky. You think of some of the African runners, the
Yeah,
Kenyan Eliud Kipchoge, I think that's what his name was,
yeah,
who actually
yes,
became the first person to run a sub 2 hour marathon.
correct,
How does it work for them? Because they have a very small amount of muscle mass, not too much, and of course their body fat percentage is also in the single digits, most likely.
correct.
So how are they still able to store the glycogen if their muscle mass is very limited?
So liver is the second organ, I would say.
Okay.
And the third thing is genetics, or the kind of muscle fiber you have. That plays a vital role. Because if you see, even at the Mumbai Marathon and any other marathons which I've seen, is these people are always in the first line, because their genetic makeup in such a way that, okay, they are for that sport, or they are meant to be runner. Okay, so your genes also play a vital role when it comes to running or any sport. If I know that, okay, my endurance gene is not that great and my power gene is amazing, then I know that, okay, I should be in a power sport rather than pushing myself to do well in the running. So genetics is one thing, and secondly, like I said, even if they have lesser I would say fat percentage, or lean body mass, I would say, but then it depends on what kind of muscle fiber they have worked on, depending on the
Okay.
training routine. Yeah, so even that matters a lot. So even if they are so even if they have stored in liver, but then muscle is also another part which plays a vital role when it comes to running, or when it comes to their performance. So yeah,
Understood. So it's not just the muscle mass, but the quality of the muscle
quality.
fibers that matters as well. Which is why there's
Yeah,
lots of people who might not seem as bulky or muscular, but they're very strong nonetheless. So they can
right,
actually lift
right,
as much as, say, someone who's bulkier, someone who's much heavier in terms of muscle mass can.
correct, correct, correct.
Brilliant, brilliant. Then we have Kushal Palicha with a penultimate question, but in case there are other questions that people might have, please do ask them. Kushal saying, past few years, there's been some backlash against something as basic as dairy products. Have even read articles where some athletes are opting to try to eliminate them. Any thoughts on athlete performance and dairy? You spoke about veganism versus meat eaters, but if you could touch upon specifically the consumption of dairy.
So, like I said, it's dairy and gluten are the two things which are prominently discussed about. So, as gluten has the similar effect, or the I would say the pros and cons, same ways the lactose or even the dairy products do have. But it depends on what is the requirement of your sport, and secondly, going off any food, you should be knowing that what is my replacement, or where is the other nutrient, or what are the possible nutrients I'm being deficit of. So if you're going off dairy foods, like I said, you should be sure that, okay, I am lactose intolerant, or I am allergic to dairy products, because some people might be able to digest milk, or sorry, not digest milk, but able to digest other products. So until
Mhm.
and unless you know that, okay, I am okay with these foods and I'm able to digest, or my body is able to digest them well, then it's a win-win situation. But I personally don't I would say restrict or tell my athletes to avoid a certain food, because all foods are important. All foods do contain some or the other nutrition which you might not get from the vegetable sources, or maybe from the plant sources, or maybe from the other sources, I would say. So going off dairy products is not an option until unless you know that, okay, you're allergic or intolerant to it.
And ma'am, the people who are actually intolerant to dairy products, or don't quite react well to dairy
Hmm.
products, would you suggest something like a Greek yogurt? Because I think Greek yogurt is perhaps not as harsh on the body as something like a milk might be.
Right, definitely. Because what happens is milk contains this lactose sugar, which is basically broken down in your stomach. But when you talk about paneer, or when you talk about normal curd or buttermilk or yogurt, these all foods, there's already a fermentation which has happened. Okay, and the lactose sugar is already broken down, so your body does not have to do that task. So yes, ultimately it's a better option when it comes to those people who are lactose intolerant. So that's what I said. They might not be able to digest the milk well, but they're okay doing other products as well. So yeah.
And ma'am, I end up experiencing a lot of bloating whenever I end up eating milk or paneer. But you know what I do in that case,
What?
especially when I'm eating paneer?
Tofu.
I still end up eating it because the pleasure that I derive from eating
Yeah.
paneer is much more than the pain that I actually derive from the bloating that I experience. Nand- Nand- Nandini Garg saying there is a lot of media news about not eating rice, or perhaps preferring brown rice to white rice. What's your take on it, considering their rice has been a big part of the stable Indian diet for centuries?
Right, right. So it's all about the processing. If you see white rice versus brown rice, so white rice is more processed as compared to brown rice, because brown rice do have a lot of fiber, or the husk, I would say. So that's the reason why it makes it healthy. Because the simple example, or the simple way I can elaborate on this is, when you have white rice, your stomach does not have to do a lot of work because it is easy to digest. Okay, it easily is digested, it is easily absorbed and easily stored as well. Okay, that's the reason why people nowadays say that, okay, I want to switch from white rice to brown rice. But when it comes to brown rice, your body has to do a lot of work, considering the fiber. Okay, and when that fiber is entered into your intestine for the proper absorption and all that, in that case, basically your body does not store it at too much extent as compared to white rice. Okay, that's the reason why as soon as people who put on weight, they completely go off white rice and they go
Yeah.
for brown rice or quinoa or couscous and all these other healthy options, because only the difference is the processing and the kind of fiber it has. So white rice, since it is more processed, it does not contain any sort of a fiber. That's the reason why you get that insulin spike post your lunch, okay, or post any meal, I would say. You start feeling drowsy and sleepy because there's a sudden rise in blood glucose level, because the food is digested at a much quicker way. But if
And
you see,
the sudden rise is followed by sudden crash, which is what leads to
exactly,
the lethargy.
exactly, which is, yeah, lethargy. And along with that, that's also another reason why people get are diabetic, or that's the reason why people's insulin levels go haywire, especially when they're diabetic. So when you have brown rice, at that point of time, this sudden rise does not happen, because the absorption and the digestion is happening at a much slower rate, and there is a gradual release in the blood glucose, which keeps
Makes
you
sense.
much more healthier as compared to white rice.
Makes sense.
But
But I'm
like I
guessing.
said,
Mhm. Go
moderation
on.
is the key, I would say. Some people might like brown rice, some people might not. Some people can't leave white rice. So until and unless you're moderating it, until unless you're working it out, then it's a good thing.
Beautiful. Talking about moderation, Oscar Wilde once said, everything in moderation, including moderation. We have Pulkit Sankala, who says, what's the ideal way to increase calorie intake? Also, are there any supplements that one should consume on a regular basis to fulfill the basic requirement in terms of essential vitamins slash minerals?
To increase calorie intake, first of all, you should know that, okay, how much calories you need as per your body composition, as per your ideal body weight and height and all those things. Okay, once you know that, okay, these many calories I need, and you should be knowing that what's your goal. So even if you want to increase the caloric intake, you should be knowing whether do I want to increase my muscle mass, or do you want to put on weight with regards to fat mass or muscle mass or whatever it is. So it should be basically properly design that, okay, this is my goal and this is what I need when it comes to food. Talking about how to increase it, the simplest way, what I earlier said, is eat small and frequent meals. If you're putting continuously some or the other thing in your body, there's a constant source of energy, constant source of calories which are going inside. Okay, so if I am burning maybe say 1200 or 1300 kilocalorie just by doing my regular work, and if I know that I'm working out for more than an hour or so, then in that case basically I know that I need to have a 1500 or a 1600 kilocalorie diet. How am I going to do that? I can't be sitting at a maybe for lunch, and I can't have a whole plate of food, just because I want to increase my calories. So the simplest way to do is to have small and frequent meals. Maybe you can increase the density of the meal. Okay, you can probably have calorie dense meal, so that you know that, okay, at least my calories are fulfilled. Okay, so that's about the calorie intake. And talking about supplements, blindly I would never suggest any sort of supplement to any individual. But talking about vitamins and minerals, I would still say that, okay, having a multivitamin or a B vitamin supplement or a medicine is something which I would advise, considering the situation we are in, because everyone is talking about immunity, everyone is talking about how to keep themselves healthy. So a multivitamin or a mineral supplement, or say B vitamin supplement, is something which you can take on a regular basis. But if you want to go in for something which is very specific, then it should be under supervision.
Brilliant. And ma'am, my mother doesn't quite allow me to eat eggs, but I love eggs
Hmm.
from the taste standpoint, but also from a nutritional perspective. What if I share her number with you and you can convince her that she should allow me to consume eggs?
Definitely, definitely, I would do that.
Brilliant. We're ardent gens, or at least she's an ardent gen, so you can understand her concern with her son eating eggs. But look, I cannot thank you enough for the last 50, 55 odd minutes that you've spent with us. It's been a beautiful discussion filled with gems from start to finish. You've been able to maximize the signal in this discussion while minimizing the noise. And I'm pretty sure everyone who's watched, you could tell from the number of questions that came, from the intricate nature of all the questions that came, that people were definitely listening from start to finish with rapt attention, and everyone took a lot away from the discussion. And it's not just me saying that. We have Yali Ya, who says precise, concise answers, fantastic interaction. My questions were answered during the course of the discussion without even being asked. Thanks a ton. And he or she is summing up the sentiments of everyone who listen in. So thank you so much, Shreya ma'am,
Pleasure.
again. And hopefully we can have you on One Play Sports again in the near future.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's been pleasure, answering and solving all the doubts which most of the people have. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, you can visit my website. It's shreyaadhav.com, and I'm also on there on all possible social medias. So if you have any questions with regards to diet, nutrition, athletes, weight loss, whatever it is, you can definitely get in touch with me. Thank you,
And ma'am,
Anubhav. Thank you so much.
you
Yes,
talked about your venture as well. Spirit, is that a
Spirit
different website,
Nutrition,
or can they actually get to Spirit through your
both,
personal website?
personal website as well.
Personal website as well, right? Lovely.
Yes.
Great. So we'll conclude proceedings on that note. And a big thank you to all the viewers for asking us so many questions and for listening with rapt attention. Stay tuned on One Play Sports Networks for more live coverage on sports as well as fitness coming your way throughout the course of this lockdown and even after the lockdown. Anyway, have a good rest of the week and enjoy the weekend as well. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye bye.